you want to try to go for a sure bet as possible. So you do your homework and you don't get too big. And that's one of the issues that you get with developing. It's very easy to bite off more than you can chew.
You are listening to the Property Developer Podcast, your home for tips, ideas, and inspiration to help take your developing to the next level. Now here's your host, Justin Getty.
Hello and welcome to episode 95 of the show. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing? I'm doing well. Got a great show coming up for you today with an international guest talking about developing property in the Caribbean. Before we get to that, here's a quick update on how things are going with my projects. The roof is finally going on the townhouses at Cambridge Road, which will be great, as they can finally be protected from all the rain we've been having in Melbourne. It's been so wet the last few months. It's been crazy. Work is underway with the external cladding and windows, and fingers crossed for lockup before the end of the year. It's been a painfully slow 12 months on the build, and I really expected to be much further on than what we are. But that seems to be a common challenge with building at the moment, so I'm just having to roll with it. On my other project, we finally submitted our town planning application, so now we sit back and wait to see what council comes back with. No doubt there'll be some sort of laundry list of issues we need to address, but we'll find out soon enough, hopefully, although I've heard there's been long delays with council planning areas as well. Otherwise, the end of the year is fast approaching, and what an unusual year it's been. Started off with low interest rates and a buoyant market, and finishes with high inflation, escalating build costs, and softening prices in many markets. I'm sure next year will be just as dynamic in the property industry, and I'm very confident that most of our markets will hold up okay through 2023. Speaking of next year, I'm offering an end of year special on the property developer training. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, then head over to www.propertydevelopertraining.com and use the code XMAS until the 25th of December to get a juicy discount. There's still loads of people joining up, so get on board and you can check out everything that's on offer at propertydevelopertraining.com. And that includes the new training course that I added to the program called Taking It to the Next Level for people who may want to go full time. So there's even more value inside the training now. So don't wait another year to get started on something you'd love to do. I've also got a little Christmas promo on my book so that you can gift it to all the people you know that have an interest in property developing. Head to www.propertydeveloperpodcast.com/book and use the code XMAS for a cheeky little end of year discount. Okay, on with the show. As I mentioned, I've got a great guest for you, Anselm Mathurin, who is a Caribbean-based property developer with a terrific story to share about following a dream and learning along the way. Like most property developers, Anselm has faced some challenges in getting his projects out of the ground, including having to relocate from his home on another island to be closer to the development site when things started going off track. He shares with us how taking effective control of a project can lead to significant savings, how experience shapes how you view potential yields from a site, and how targeting a very niche market can be an astute strategy for selling your product. I am sure you will enjoy this chat with Anselm and appreciate how he has adapted and evolved along the way. So, let's find out what the favourite food of a man from the Caribbean might be.
Seafood Alfredo. I love seafood. Seafood Alfredo. It's my comfort food. I do it often because it gets you a bit fat, but it's satisfying. Just
well, given that you live on a small island, I'm guessing that access to lovely fresh seafood is not a big problem for you.
It is not. No, it is not. It's not. Price is else because lobster is pretty expensive, but it's accessible.
Very good. Is there a particular type of seafood that you like to put in the Alfredo?
I enjoy lobster, jumbo shrimp, of course, shelled and deveined, scallops, and if you get lucky, you might get some mussels in there.
Oh, you've definitely got the fine taste of a property developer.
I don't know what I just did. It's an island, so we have a lot of seafood.
All right. Well, as we've already suggested, you're from a small Caribbean island called St. Lucia. You're our first Caribbean guest on the show, so that's exciting. But before we talk about property developing in St. Lucia and the Caribbean, give us a bit of a sense of St. Lucia, the size, what's the economy like, and then we'll get into property.
Yeah, St. Lucia is central Les Angeles. That's north of Venezuela, north of Trinidad and Tobago, south of Dominica, south of Martinique. That's a big French dependency. Our population is about 181,000, largely agrarian, historically an agrarian economy, bananas, but with fair trade and US policies, we lost our preferential access to the UK market. And so we've had to diversify into tourism. So tourism is our biggest income earner, and followed by real estate and construction. Primarily, we Catholic, even though we are British, from British colony. We have an interest in history. 7 times British, 7 times French, 14 major colonial battles. And the last one, England won. We've always wondered, some of us, had the French won, Justin, we'd have free college, free university. Now we have to pay for that. But the influence of the French has shaped a lot of the names of our people. My surname, Mathurin. Creole is a spoken dialect, much like the Seychelles, some of them, I think, Mauritius as well. And the street names and cities and towns names have French influence and French history.
Very exciting. Sounds quite exotic. And then you mentioned real estate and construction is a big part of the economy.
It's the second biggest income earner over the last 5-7 years. A lot of development happening, commercial, as well as speculative residential and hotels, of course, because we don't have enough rooms for the demand. St. Lucia has the notoriety, I think, of having won the most romantic, I think number one honeymoon destination for 12 or 13 consecutive years. So we're very popular.
Oh, well, hopefully my wife isn't listening to this episode, because then she'll be wondering why I didn't take her there for our honeymoon. But anyhow.
Now you know. You didn't know, but now you know.
Maybe for the next anniversary.
Renewal of vows, Justin.
Yeah,
Renewal
that's
of vows.
Right.
We'll take care of you.
Okay, well, before we move further into property in St. Lucia, give us a bit of a background of yourself and how you got into property development and property investing.
Justin, I got into probably to tell you about myself. I've been in telecoms for about 25 years. When I came from grad school, a lot like your background in comms. I was interested in marketing, but not what I call the colors on crayons. So I wasn't interested in the communication part of it. I was interested in the decision-making theory of customers, the cognitive reasoning, what made them buy, and how could that be profitable for businesses. So I was interested in the numbers part of marketing, product development, product profitability. And that's how I got into telecoms. I wanted to work for the largest company on the island. And at the time, you would know this company, I think Cable and Wireless, they're a global multinational company. And they pretty much had the monopoly in the entire Caribbean for the last 100 years until it became deregulated about 15 years ago.
And then your move into property was a side project, was it?
Yeah, so we built our first house. Typically in the Caribbean, Most people, unlike a lot of the developed markets, Justin, we don't buy houses. We get a plot of land, and we build our homes. And of course, for 99% of us, you build one house in your lifetime, the most significant investment you will ever make, and you die in that house and you pass it on to your children. And so we built this house, married, and I wanted to have a comfortable space. So there was 3 levels, and the bottom level I left Justin for my man cave. I bought a pool table from the US, bowls, skills, rounds, and I had a very good friend. He was doing property development, one house, just small houses, building them, living them, and selling them. And he told me I was mad. The man cave concept is an American concept, and we don't have the luxuries in our small economies to have a man cave. I should put an apartment. I said, okay. I saw what he was doing. I went to get an apartment, went for a loan. We required $100,000 for the apartment and the pool. Because remember, we had the slab because it was like the basement. And went to the bank, and they said my mortgage is going to increase by $69. I was like, what? I never really checked about mortgages before. You just work and you just happen to deal at home with your wife. My mortgage is only $69 more. How much am I already paying for my entire mortgage? He was very reluctant. Eventually, he told me when I threatened to go to his boss. And I found out for the first time at the age maybe of 31, 32, that we typically pay up to 3 times the principal. And that was a shocker to me. I went to research, I started reading books, and of course, it's cliche for Robert Kiyosaki. Once you read the cash flow quadrant, it changes you, and that's what happened. And so we built the apartment, we rented it, and the apartment covered about 50% of the mortgage. And I got to like that, Justin. I like that breather. 50% of your mortgage, I'm living upstairs, I'm comfortable, and there's different access for the tenant. A lot of people complain about having people around them in their space, and that's one of the reasons they don't want people to live on their premises. But it was they parked below different access, and I never saw the tenant. But I got a taste of it, and I just got on to reading some more and more and more.
And are you still in that house?
No, Justin. While we were in the house, I started looking for property. I created a criteria because I too was afraid of having a mortgage like this. Now, before all of this was happening, I was a property investor, unbeknownst to me, not actively. Was buying pieces of land for later on. A lot of Caribbean people have this romantic notion that we're going to buy land for later on, and then we're going to build apartments when we get old. And so I was just buying pieces of land. At the time, if you work for the only monopoly or one of the 2 monopolies on the island, your job was seen as job for life and fairly secure. And so when you went to the bank, you got loans like within 5 days for land. And I got up one where I had something like 4 or 5 pieces of land. And I was trying to get a mortgage on this one piece. I wanted one piece. And the bank said, no, your debt service ratio in the Caribbean, it mustn't be more than 40%. In other words, the debt that you have must not be more than 40% of your salary. So I decided to migrate, look for a job within another island. I was taxed. So I discussed with my wife, and I moved to an island tax-free to get a loan to build that first block of 4 units. But it wasn't as easy because the tables turned. In the past, when you work for the monopoly, on maybe one biggest companies on island, you're really secure. At that time, regulation had started happening. The world was moving away from monopolies. And maybe I don't know what it tells you, how long Telstra was a monopoly for, but then, certainly when I went back to the bank, I made the sacrifice. I moved to an island, left my wife and daughter back home to qualify for that loan. And the bank suddenly said, both yourself and your wife work for that same company as executives, and they are now at risk of, letting go staff because carrying costs and because now they have competition. So tables were turned, Justin, and I couldn't get the loan. And I was suffering where I was with my family 2 years, different market, different culture. Um, people at the time, people didn't look kindly, for Caribbean nationals, Caribbean expats, coming to the market because they saw you as just taking the jobs as opposed to adding value. It was very hard, 2 years. And I think I came home every 6 weeks. And I met a friend of mine. He told me, there's this new bank, that was offering new products. And so I went to them and they said, okay, we'll give you a loan, but it's a commercial loan because now you're speculating because I had one mortgage already. My mortgage rate at the time was 7.25. And these guys wanted to charge me like 12%. So I negotiated down to 10%, but a significant deposit. And that's how I got to do the first set of 4 units away and from a what they call a remote developer. And I hired my best friend at the time, who was the person who advised me to do the apartment. So he was my project manager from abroad, and I came home every 6 weeks until we got it done.
And how big was that parcel of land? And what were describe the units that you put on their size, that sort of thing?
So it's interesting because that lot was too big for me to afford, Justin. I was already carrying at least 3 or 4 mortgages, one proper house of land mortgage and small parcels of land. But I wanted that piece of property because it was near the highway, it was close to the main shopping centers, amazing sea view, a beach within 5 minutes walking distance. And so it was 22,000 square feet. That was very big. For me, I was only buying small pieces, just in like 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 for singular dwellings. And I was able to make a deal with the daughter of the landowner, who was my friend. And she convinced her dad to cut it up into 4 small pieces. And I bought a piece every 6 months for 2 years. So I decided to build on one of the units, one of the lots. The entire development would have been 8 units, would have cut across 2 lots, and it was 7,200 square feet per block. So the units were 900 square feet in all, built space, 450 downstairs, two bedrooms, 2 baths upstairs, and then we had a deck, 200. So 1,100 square feet for each unit. And we built 4 of them. And that was supposed to be the second half of a long chain of row houses. So I built it on the block that was further away from the entrance. And I'm only now, 10 years later, right now as we speak, Justin, we have the first part of this building in waiting my permits and approval. But I've changed it. I'm no longer doing 4 2-bedrooms. I'm doing 8.
Nice. And for those of us who work in the metric system, I think that's roughly, the site is roughly 2,200 square meters.
That's correct.
And so your lots are sort of about 700 square meters. And
divided by 10, roughly,
yes,
right?
Yep, roughly.
Sorry
and so what, you had 2 down below, so they're like apartments.
It's townhouses.
Yeah.
So you have when you walk in, you and I always believe in that. I don't know if you do that as well, but I always believe when you open that front door, you must see something amazing. So I always have open plan, looking straight to the sea, straight to the view. So downstairs you enter kitchen, dining, living, balcony, a porch. Then you go upstairs, and under the staircase, I have the washer dryer and the powder room. When you go on the top floor, you have 2 ensuite bathrooms. Of course, the one in the front has a balcony overlooking the view of the sea.
Well, when you live in,
we have 4 identical units.
When you develop in the Caribbean, I think it's probably a bit easier to have an amazing view when you open the door and look out to the sea.
Just I don't know where Bondi Beach is, but I want to come and see it before I go to Brisbane. I have to
Well,
come.
you'll be struggling to get 20,000 square feet of developable land overlooking Bondi Beach, but you've
I'm
got
sure.
just as good views there. And so you've finished those 4 units, and they're all completed and sold?
Yes, we finished those 4 units. That was 2011. I moved to the tax-free jurisdiction. I did not get the loan until like 2013, like 2013, and we started building late 2013, 2014, and I came back home 2015 with about 3 months to go. And what I did was not common because I priced it specifically for a particular market. I always wanted to create a product for the diaspora market, which encompasses St. Lucians, the Caribbean nationals living in the US, UK, and Canada. These people, they always want to have a property back home. They typically come home once a year or twice a year, maybe 2 weeks at a time, but they don't want a house. And certainly, as you know, my cousins always tell us, they don't want to live in the granny's house anymore, Justin. Most of our grandparents and parents' houses, we have no air conditioned units. And this generation now, we live on air conditioned units, we live on big screen TVs and the modern accommodation and amenities. So I wanted to price it under 200,000 US dollars, recognizing though that it would be small. We got some pretty bad reviews from local realtors, but I knew what my target market was. And I didn't care what they said. Said it's just too small. Who's going to want this? And sometimes that feedback is good, but I've done enough research around that segment and the price point. Prior to that, there was no other condo available, modern amenities, sea view, gated, pool for under 300,000 US, 295 US, and I was at 186. So I knew that there was demand. The biggest challenge that we had for selling those units was the onerous requirements of banks to give loans to non-residents. Whereas, if you a resident, you pay what, maybe 5%, Justin? If you were a St. Lucian abroad or Dominican or Antiguan abroad in the US and UK, you want to get a loan in the jurisdiction of where the property has title, they can charge you up to 35% deposit. And that was a headache. So a couple of my buyers were cash buyers, and the other had to go through a long process. As part of my model, I always keep one of my units, at least one. I try to keep 25% of the stock, and I know you discussed that for yourself as well. I try to keep 25% of the stock, but I always keep at least one unit. So I've sold 3 and I've kept 1.
Yeah. So in Australia, we would call that expatriate market, and there is also stock that's designed and sold to that kind of market. And also for investors, it's quite common to have a sort of 20 to 30% deposit for a loan. So tell us how you marketed the properties to those potential buyers. Did you use a local agent? Did you do it yourself? How did that work?
Yeah. So what I did, and that was early days on social media before Instagram. So it was Facebook and Twitter. What I did, I targeted agents in those markets. So I went online, I made calls, I got agents in Toronto, I got agents in New York, in Miami, and in London. And I also advertised in major diaspora magazines. And the difference between a diaspora and the expatriate market is the expatriate could be from anywhere, but the diaspora is from your region. So I would sponsor prizes like a suitcase, a suitcase symbolic, at a dinner for even independence events. So, for example, if you have, Aussies in the UK, and for Australian independence, they might have a banquet. So I would sponsor a prize, in a banquet for St. Lucian independence, for Barbados independence. So that's what I did, and that was okay because the prices were small, $300-400 US. But then, it got ticklish because one of the agents felt like she was working and she wasn't getting the sale, so she wanted me to pay her for her time. I would buy the tickets for the banquet, and so that relationship, didn't last very long. And by that time, I had already taken out advertisements in a lot of those booklets for those events, and so there was a lot of interest already.
And so did you manage those sales, or were they done through agents?
No, I did. I managed all the sales. The first sale was through that first agent, and I managed the other sales myself. It's pretty free. It's free and it's inexpensive. And coming from the corporate world, Justin, as in the corporate communications world, we know what advertising is, how expensive advertising is through traditional media. So, for example, if I were to advertise on television, national television, for, let's say, a 4-week campaign, couple of spots per day, would be about $1,500 US, and that's only terrestrial TV or cable TV. For $20 on Instagram or on Facebook, on Google Ads, I get 15,000, 20,000 impressions, and that proved, quite useful, and it's a big advantage for us, with the availability of such affordable advertising now.
Yes, I remember an old saying around advertising that 50% of advertising works. The only problem is we don't know which 50% is working.
That's correct.
So you're spending a lot of money to
but,
find
but,
out.
But we had a ready market, so I knew where they were. The biggest challenge was helping them get financing.
And so that was on the ground. So you were supporting them. So how does that? Do you have brokers in Australia? We have what's called brokers that liaise with lenders and can guide you through all that.
Yeah.
How does it work in St. Lucia?
So our landscape is not so sophisticated. So all I did is contact 3 banks that I work with, 3 loan officers who would have interviewed me for my project, and I would have chosen the most favorable one, or the one who offered the most favorable terms. And so I would say, hey, there are loads of people who want to buy condos in St. Lucia or in the Caribbean. Can I give them your information? They say, of course. And so I'd funnel every inquiry I got to all 3 loan officers, and they took it from there.
And so how did the sale work? We would call that an off-the-plan sale here, and usually you would get a 10% deposit with the rest paid on completion, depending on how it's structured. But how did it work for you? How does it work over there?
Justin, I never do off-the-plan sales. I'm too risk averse for that, and because I'm still not a full-time property developer. You still have a day job, you still have your obligations, and the last thing you want is to find yourself to be embroiled in a scandal where it's in the media, in the press, that you took deposits and you couldn't deliver. So I took all the risks, and I only sold the properties when they were finished, and I will continue doing it that way in as far as I can, for as long as I can. We get offers like right now for the units 1 to 4, because we've done units 4 to 8. I have 6 sales, or 6 expressions of interest. 6 sales, and they're all offering me deposits, and I'm not accepting it. I told them if they want to, they can put it in escrow with their own lawyer, but I'm not accepting it because too many things could happen, and I do not want to have people's deposits and cannot deliver.
Oh, that's interesting. So with the first 4 that you finished, did you get expressions of interest and then build, or did you build and try and get buyers along the way and then settle everything when it was finished?
So the latter, because I was building them more for myself as my investment. So I always say, because my criteria was so strict, I always describe my criteria as a recession buffer because of where it is and the size of it. I was very comfortable that it could rent and give me, just in as much as 40% positive cash flow. So I was comfortable with that. So if I don't sell it, I just rent it. And that's my model today as well. That's still my model today. I know that in my feasibility, I'll have to add that in for my revenue, but I don't mind that. I feel safer that way.
That's interesting. And so then tell us a bit about construction in St. Lucia. Is it challenging, costly, timely?
So I'm learning. My last building I built maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. Just so I ended just COVID. Finished just at the start of COVID. Construction to the quality that we're looking for right now is about 310 EC. It's about 110 US dollars a square foot. So that's what 110 US dollars a square foot. And when I built 3 years ago, it would have been in the region of $75. So you have an additional what? $35, $30?
Yeah.
On the rate, $35, 40 maybe. So it's increased by about 30% at least. And the challenge that you have is getting quality labor, when you want it. Supervision is still challenging. I followed you for a long time, and I hear you talk about your contracts with your builders, and even now, I think your last podcast was there is the dilemma of builders now not being able to guarantee a fixed price contract because of rising building material costs. So my model is I don't give full price contracts. So I still try to pay for my own materials because there's a contractor discount of 20%. So I have a contractor's account, and I will tell you though, not all builders will go into that arrangement. So you have to get the builder who's willing to do that for you, and you pay him labor plus a little bit. So for me, that was how I was able to save. It's a little more than a labor only contract, but I procure. I have accounts, and they go and charge on the account the materials. That's how you save money. And I will say off the bat for our listeners that many builders will probably not want that arrangement. There is comfort in having a fixed price contract, so you know that this is what you paid for and this is what you're supposed to get. But with the dynamic pricing now, and that itself could be challenging. So but you still have to go on your site every day, sometimes twice a day, and hope that the challenges are not insurmountable, because you will get challenges. For me, the biggest question that you want to answer just in every single time is whether or not the builder stuck to the approved drawings and it did put as much of the prescribed materials, the size of the steel, the thickness of the concrete. That's what you want to make sure happens.
Yeah, so it's still an area that you need to focus on here when you give the whole contract to the builder. You still have to make sure that they're doing all that stuff anyway. What about, how long did that building take, the 4 townhouses?
So anywhere from 9 to 12 months, but on average 9 months, because it weren't huge, about 9 months. But then what you find happening with those types of arrangements where you do subcontracts within the project is that no one is accountable. So I wouldn't really recommend it unless you have a solid team of people that you've been working with before. I have a simple issue like windows. You bring in the window contractor, and the window contractor tells you, no, those lines are not straight. And the builder says, no, it's nonsense, they're straight. And so if you have leaks, no one takes accountability for it, as opposed to having one contract, the builder, you're responsible, you get it fixed.
Yes, that's absolutely
so
true.
9 months on average, yeah.
And then take us a step back in terms of how do you go about getting approvals to do something like that? If you're in a British colony or an ex-British colony, you probably have a similar planning system to Australia, but walk us through how you get approval to do a project like that.
Absolutely. So you have the famous Development Control Authority, called them DCA. I know you always speak about councils. Development Control Authority, they are the keepers of the lamp, and you need to go through an architect with your design. There are exceptions. It's changing now. In St. Lucia, you could have done just under 2,500 square feet. Or is that 250 square meters?
Roughly,
Any building that doesn't get to 250 square meters or 2,500 square feet, you can get a draftee to do it. So I can tell you, Justin, I've always used draftees. But again, draftees have the limitations, because the draftee will formalize my sketch. But I get into the building and suddenly I can't feel any breeze. The draftee has no knowledge of ventilation, but he gave me what I wanted, at 10% of the price. So again, you have to get guidance there. So you can use a draftsman.
They put a wall right at the end of your entryway corridor, blocking your nice view of
blocking your view. Yeah. So if it's under 2,500 square feet or 250 square meters, you can get a drafty. 2,500 square feet and above, you must have an architect. And that process is because architects are very, very opinionated, and quite rightly so, because they need to tread the delicate balance of what a customer wants and what they know is best. And not what they think, because they probably know what's best in most cases, and you end up somewhere in the middle. So after you get your architects to do the drawings, he submits it. Then has to go through a series of places, health and fire. It needs to go to solid waste. And then after you get those preliminary approvals, then goes to electricals and infrastructure, and then gets to DCA. Typically, it takes anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks, just in nothing like the 2 years. So, but a bad situation is 3 months.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I know we're not dealing with 100th of the number of plans that you guys do in Australia. But 3 months is an average period of time to wait for it. And typically, if there's an issue, they would contact you via letter, via mail, tell you need to modify these things and resubmit it back. And if it's not major, what they would do, they would approve it pending some changes, so it doesn't have to go to the board meeting. The board meeting is held once a month. So they do round robin and they approve it for you. And then you can build. But you have 365 days or 1 year to build. If it's beyond 365 days, you need to reapply, resubmit the plan.
The building doesn't have to be completed, just started.
No, just started.
Right. I think that's reasonable. I mean, my view is that should be the same in Australia. It should take 3 months to get a decision on a planning application, not 6 to 12 months. But
numbers, I guess, the scale.
Yeah, we pay for the privilege of applying, and anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. What other projects? So that was your first one, done and dusted. 3 out of the 4 sold. Happy buyers, happy property developer.
Yeah, just getting your feet wet. Property developer, then you go into property management. That's a whole different story. So then I came back home, and I left where I was. I came back home, and quote unquote retired. I thought I did because I was always looking to retire at 40. I came back at 41. And, I spent the next year building right across from the first lot we had. Just like tried to get that lot, and the owner said he wasn't selling. So right across from my first house. And eventually he sold it, and we bought it. And after watching 200 episodes of podcasts or 300 episodes of podcasts from all over the world, including the Property Developer Podcast, watch every episode of Grand Design, just literally scouring the internet for those shows. I got this crazy idea. I told my wife, let's sell the house. Let's sell the house.
Always a great idea to take to your wife.
It took her, I don't know, 6 months, 7 months to change her mind, and we finally agreed to do it. But you have to sell obviously the benefits, and partners are good in these cases because they give you some sobering reality. So I'm off, no longer working. You get your nest egg, it's in your hands. And so I decided to do a 4-story building right across the road. But the first thing I have to do, of course, just in the top floor, is rebuild my wife a house. So you build it 4 floors because it was on a slope, overlooking an amazing view. So you build a house on top, and you put the slabs below. So I had 3 more slabs, and we put 6 more units below. So we move into the house and spend the next year and a half populating 6 more units below. Roughly 900 square feet, each unit, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. This was my 3rd project, because building a house first. The 4 units is my 3rd project. So you're a little more comfortable with it. That was challenging by itself, because now you're building from your own cash. That's a different story altogether, because it's like you're taking money from one place, hey, Justin, and you're creating something with it that's supposed to feed you. Because then that would have been my new salary from those 6 units. And we did it. And same thing, got it done, but chose not to sell it, because there was no mortgage on it. Chose not to sell it. So in effect, that became my salary. But I was maybe the 2 most amazing years of my life, because I got to learn so much more about myself, so much more about people. And it's a bug, it's addictive, Justin. When you start doing, you come every day on the site, you want to see what's happening. It's an amazing experience. So, by that time, just like, I don't know, I'm sure just like you, every salesperson in the hardware store knows you by your first name. They want to see the project too. And actually, I felt bad, because I felt like all of these clerks were helping me, and I was telling them what I was doing, because they asked questions. And you try to encourage them to start looking at stuff for themselves, whether it's for promotion or for self-development. I said, I wish they could see like what they're contributing to. So I was able to bring maybe a couple of them different times to see the project, to see what I said, all of your advice, this is where it is. So I thank you for it. This is what you actually do. This is how you impact the lives of other people. So never underestimate or discount what you do in a hardware store, because you really make people comfortable, and you give people home.
Oh, it's unbelievable how many people that are involved in a project when you sit down and actually think about it, from the designers and the builders and all the administrators in those businesses and the suppliers along the way. It's huge ripple effect that it can have. You just mentioned those 2 years were amazing in terms of what you learned about yourself and others. What were some of the key things that you learned about yourself?
Boy, I learned that I was a lot more resilient than I thought I was, because any day you could have literal tragedy and accident on the site. Any day you could come and see a wall built where it was not supposed to be. You could actually pay people for jobs and they never show up. your ability to take the good and the bad and still present a brave face to people on the project. But guess what, Justin? More so to your wife, who knows how much money you put into this project. You can't just come home and give all the bad news. You also have to say, you can't just come home and give good news. You also have to say what's happening, especially if they come to visit. So I learned about people as well. You know, you can't make anybody do what they don't want to. And maybe integrity is not as common as you would have thought, and that you're very, very naive, very, very naive, about the world. And in as much as you think, okay, if I treat my workers good, if I treat workers good, you go the extra mile, then you will get repaid back with loyalty. It doesn't always happen. In fact, it happens less often than not. Yeah.
Yes, it's very true about it can be lonely sometimes being a property developer, because no one really understands all the issues and challenges and problems that you're facing along the way. Some of them are small, some of them are big, but you're actually the only person that really understands the full picture. So that's why it can be a bit lonely. So it's one of the reasons I started the podcast.
Yeah. Everybody, I was just about to say that it also gave me purpose, and I wanted to share, because like I felt like some of the mistakes I made, I wanted to share. I wanted more people to know about it. So you can do this too. It can help you achieve some of your goals. But if you're doing this, if you're going to go and invest in this, make sure you know these things. And so that's why I started a podcast, and just I thought about it for years, like 7 years before, all time from 2011. I'm in this country and I'm consuming 3 episodes a day, and I'm saying that you can start a podcast. People are going to say you don't know, and you have to do something first. You have to do this many times over, because you're not an authority on anything. You don't know anything. You just started. And it took some time for you to feel comfortable to put yourself out there. It's very scary. But when you do, if you have the right motive, it's very rewarding. It's very rewarding.
And so you started a podcast, and you're now helping Caribbean property investors. Tell us more about that. What's that involve?
Yeah, so we started the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast because my interest in sharing came from economic empowerment. We don't have as many jobs as in Australia and developed countries. We don't have many companies and businesses, and our economies are, micro economies compared to developed countries. And so typically, if you have a cadre of highly qualified, highly educated people, you only have a few places, for them to work at. And in our case, what was happening, we saw a high level of attrition, and disposal actually at the executive level, because every time the company changed, it was a multinational. Every time the company changed, I had new leadership. They would bring in all of their own people. So one time it was Ericsson, were all these Ericsson guys. Then Motorola, then AT&T, and it didn't matter how good you were. If you're not affiliated with those people, or if you don't just toe the line, don't challenge too much, just do what you have to do, and make no noise, then that's the only way you survive. And always be available. Holidays, weekends, that's how you keep your job. And that's why I thought it was too hard. And I felt like nobody should actually be going through that. I have to worry, especially, and if you have, emergencies, typical savings probably won't allow you to cover them without going for a loan. And I felt I wanted to share how you break the middle class. I call it the middle class poverty cycle. And the middle class, we live on debt, and if there's one in an exogenous event, we can't survive. The best people in the middle class have what they say, just maybe 6 months salary, maybe the best 6 months to 8 months, the best, whereas most people have 1 or 2 months. I know my accountant always advised me before that, back then, always have 1 year, but I think that right now you probably need to have at least 2 years salary. So if you lose your job, you get some time. And so I wanted to help people get to a point, one, where they have this more disposable income, or two, if they lost their job, they would still have some contribution towards their mortgage, some contribution that could help send the children to school and could cover their expenses. I don't think I'm good with money at all. I didn't budget. I budget the property projects more than I budget myself, because property project to me, that's borrowed money. That's borrowed money. I have to be able to pay back the borrowed money, and so you pay a little more attention to that. So we started the podcast to just try to interview people, to share their experiences. And for me, it was just so enjoyable for me. I was learning so much. And my experience was always this. Anyone who I approach on a construction site doing a project or anywhere else, I was always welcome. I always got a good reception. And property developers like to share. I've never received, a decline, refusal. If I came on a project, respect when I ask a question, they always shared. And I felt that we had an obligation that what was shared with us by someone else, I think we have to pay it forward. And so that's what the podcast is. We interview people every fortnight. It's challenging, as you know. I'm not at number, or you're at number 86 now. I'm still at number 35. I want to start back a new series. But the idea is to get people from every island and discover the unique nuances and differences in the process, in the environment, in the markets, in the industries, and see how we can share. But the whole objective is for economic empowerment and to offer people choice.
So it sounds like you operate a build to rent type model now.
No, I call it BHSR. So build, hold, sell, and rent. So I always keep because I borrow the money up front from the bank, I have to pay it back. And holding, the strategy that I use, I don't hold for capital growth. I don't, because all of the mortgages, were single mortgages. And so the typical model is roughly 4 units, two covers the cost, sorry. And I have 2 more. So I might sell one for cash to reinvest in a new project, but I always keep one. And the idea, I just rinse and repeat. After we finish the 7-unit project where I live now, just before the pandemic, I always wanted to have some property in the nice area, in the really, really most high-end area in the country. And it was tough, but Justin, I had a habit of driving every Saturday. I just like driving every Saturday and look for property, look for places, call numbers. I have a coffee and I drive. And we got a situation where it was a expat couple, they're from France, and they were getting divorced. And my friend knew about the property. He didn't want it because it's too steep. And I got it like 60 cents on the dollar. And I built. My friends convinced me to, because we have a little network. One realtor, one architect, procurement guy, one builder, and myself. We met every Saturday for coffee, and we were all building, and that realtor would sell our properties. I will tell you though, we had an issue because that realtor wanted exclusive on all the properties, and most times we gave her the exclusive for a specified period of time. And so he said, you know what, the model that you're doing, why don't you just build one house? So I started. I said, I'm going to build one house and sell it and get some cash out, do something different. I started. Do you know that the day we had to submit the plans, I said I couldn't do it. So I made him do a modification, made it wider, split it in 2. So instead of having one big house, we had a complex with 2 units but 3 floors, because it's a high-end area, next level pricing, next level amenities and finishing. So I have 2 units, 3 floors, 3 bedrooms. You walk in, kitchen, living, dining, amazing view of the golf course, Atlantic views on the right, Caribbean sea views on the left, and you step down, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, and all the way down is the master suite. So come time for construction, just you know what I did? I said, I don't need 2 3 bedrooms. The 2 bottom master suites, I made the contractor join them, and I made a third unit. So instead of having 3 bedrooms, I did 3 2 bedrooms.
Can't help yourself.
I can't, but I think you said something in your book. And by the way, everybody should get a copy of Become $1 Million Property Developer. Everybody should get a copy. In your book, you spoke about best use of land, and if you were to ask me what I would have done differently if I were to start off now knowing what I know, is the imagination that you have because of education and knowledge. It's chalk and cheese, no comparison. That first place I spoke to you about, where we did the first 4 units and now we're doing the second 4 units, I should have put 3 stories. At the bottom, Justin, a plaza, strip mall. So we have like hairdressers or a deli, and then put 2 stories on top. That would have been, and because it's a big lot, 22,000 square feet, and then put parking. I could have had 8 units, same way on top, but I'd have had, at the bottom, I would have had retail space.
If only we could go back and change time, hey? And so tell me, have you managed to get your man cave after all of this project development?
I now, you know what my friend told me when one of the reasons he gave me after he told me I should not be doing it, and I asked him, so when I come home, what am I going to do? He said, I'm going to pay to take you out to play pool. I bring you to a bar to play pool. So no. So I've traded my man cave for vacations. For vacations. Just did Europe there with the kids, and amazing. Trade the man cave for vacations any day.
And just what's the depth like on the property markets then in St. Lucia?
In terms of demand? Very, very strong demand. The segment and the niche I play in is not one that is, I don't think anybody is tackling yet. Just you have a situation in Australia, just like the UK and most Caribbean countries. There isn't enough stock for locals. There isn't, and that's a fact. But because of the limited budget and the size of land that I'm buying, the place I play in, which is self-mortgage, bank financing based on self-equity. I only do small developments. Generally, there is a big push for luxury. So $3 million, $2 million. But I mean, these are typically expats, not locals doing that. So these are typical expat speculators. They buy property in the most high-end areas and they build luxury mansions. I want to see them. I want to see finishing. I want to see if I can learn some tricks, of some execution, some interpretations of the space. But that has space. My market, I was always looking for an upper middle class professional with Caribbean roots who probably has a home in the US and UK already and wants something that they could invest in. They could come spend a couple of weeks a year, but when it's not there, we rent. And so that has become a little more acute. So instead of putting units 1 to 4 to finish that first development, I'm putting unit 1, 1A, 2, 2A, 3. So I'm doing 8 units, 8 1-bedrooms, and I'm running it as a mini hotel, short-term rental. So, and in my space, what the units I keep, I do a split of maybe 50-50. So I do 50 long-term to anchor it, and I do 50 short-term Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com. So I have a balance. And interestingly, during the pandemic, we didn't suffer. In the pandemic, you were full. People needed somewhere to stay. Even expats who lived abroad, Justin, they couldn't travel. So they filled the unit, and we got sales during the pandemic because people who were always thinking of investing back home during the pandemic, the life changed. People died. The relatives died, and so they were motivated to buy. And I didn't have enough stock, and they bought.
Yeah, I really like how you've thought through and targeted a very specific audience, because I don't think a lot of small scale property developers really give much consideration to that. They might say, I'm targeting first home buyers, or this is for a family home. But that's kind of where they stop. They don't dig a little deeper and maybe niche down a little bit further if they can. So it's
Yeah,
interesting that you've gone very specific. I like it.
because you are responsible for the debt, and you have a wife who reminds you that your actions can affect the family. You want to try to go for as sure a bet as possible. So you do your homework, and you don't get too big, and that's one of the issues that you get with developing. It's very easy to bite off more than you can chew. And you spoke of that in your podcast. Getting mentors. I have a mentor, and he is frugal. I call him cheap. He's cheap, but he's my guy. He was the one who introduced me to the Starbucks cup you buy for $2 and you get like 40 cents off your coffee. So you'll be walking everywhere with that Starbucks cup. And we played tennis, or we used to play tennis, and it was dark. He said, okay, let's go, let's go. I said, let's finish the match. It's 2 cents, let's finish the match. He said, no, we are paying for lights. I said, how much for lights? $6. I said, let's finish the match. He said, no. I said, the secret of being rich is staying rich. So I'm not rich, but that's what he said to me. And it took me a long time to understand it. And he was just talking about frugality, just talking about once you set yourself your budget, you stick to your budget. And he said, never bet your house. He told me you never bet your house. So as he told me, as an aspiring small developer, aspiring developer, never bite off more than you can chew. So do not put up your base to secure a bet. Do not put up your base to secure a bigger project. And so, I say you stay in your segment, you become very good in your segment, you become well known in your segment, and then you scale your processes and the project size, but you don't go out too much. Don't bet more than you can lose. Easy because you get offers all the time. You get joint venture offers all the time. And you could if it's with space, do a joint venture to minimize your capital injection. And so that's where I am now, doing a couple of joint ventures now.
Yeah, it's really good advice, I think. That's the word that I used in my book, is being frugal.
That's correct.
Don't be cheap, be frugal. I like that
Correct.
word. I think it's better than being cheap. Well, it's very different. So, and yes, when you decide, or if you're looking to go bigger, you usually have two options: to either do more of the same size, or to scale up and do bigger projects. And sometimes that can be a big stretch. So, and that may not be something that people are comfortable doing. So you just want to stay somewhere within your comfort zone, I think. Go to sleep at night.
Yeah. And at a point in time, you should, look for help. You should look for help, and you pay for it. And you speak about it as well in your book. Getting a good team around you. And the more time you spend with that team, the more projects you get under your belt, the more you build trust, you build mutual respect. And you keep that team growing, and stay close to that team. Don't be, you said, don't be stingy. You get what you pay for. By the way, I think I'm a little more frugal than you. When I read your book, I'm like, boy, yeah, can I save a little bit more here? But and that's just not specifically around the type of services. And you speak of you getting the first rate, in all of the professional skills, and it because if you don't, the price you pay for shorty work or for shorty advice, it's not worth it. I've had a couple of bad experiences with some plumbers. Plumbing is not the most expensive part of your infrastructure, but it could be your most ticklish.
Yeah, that's very true. Could be, so some stinky problems to resolve, and all the
Yep.
pipes are hidden, aren't they? So it's always difficult to try and fix a broken pipe that's in a wall somewhere. So
I'm open to new ideas. So some of the key changes that we make is that we don't put pipes in slabs anymore. We put them in walls, and it's still tricky then because if you have multi levels, it might run in the ceiling. And I've had a leak in the upper floor that affected the ceiling of the bottom floor. So it's still tricky. I hope we're not discouraging anybody from being the property developer. That's
look,
more.
the big part of it is problem solving and learning things to help avoid problems in the future.
Listen, you have to be calm. You have to be even keel. You cannot overreact. You won't last. You have to be calm, and you have to see the upside in everything. But you also have to see the signs as well. Know when to cut your losses. Because some of us, will give people second and third chances, and there's no change. Somebody on the outside can say, "Why is this person still there?" Sometimes you need to make those tough calls as well.
Yes, I think that's what experience is, just understanding when that moment arrives to make the tough call.
Yep.
All right. Well, Anselm, it's been awesome talking to you about developing in the Caribbean. I do follow you on Instagram, so I see the photos that you post about your projects, and they look amazing. The locations are incredible with the views out over the blue water. Usually when I'm looking at them in winter, I kind of sigh and think I'd much rather be over there. But anyway, have you got any last parting comments or requests? Where can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more?
Yeah, I mean, the one piece of advice I have, and first piece of advice to any of the listeners, make sure you get Justin's book. I'm telling you, I'm a developer, and I've referred to it more than once in the last couple of days for specific sections. If you don't like reading, you don't have to read all one time. You can read by section. So if you want to talk about your feasibility, if you want to talk about building your team, you can go into each section. So it's a good guide for me, actually. Even though we have different different processes, as in approval processes, the values, the lessons, the preparation, they are all the same, because it's problem solving, as I said, no matter what part of the world that you're in, because you are providing a service to people. In most instances, it's probably the biggest investment in their lives. So I also follow the podcast. You can check out my podcast at Caribbean Property Investing. We also have a website, caribbeanpropertyinvesting.com, or check us out on Instagram or Facebook. And our developments are called Calabash Condos, Calabash Condos. And the reason why it's Calabash, Justin, because Calabash is our national tree. It's a national tree. I think you have the Calabash tree in Australia as well. It's like a gourd, and they empty the gourd and they make like bowls and stuff with it.
Yes, I've had more,
I guess, in the rural areas.
Yes, I've enjoyed more than one calabash of beer in my time. You might be surprised to hear.
You should behind it. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to come to Australia. I plan to come next year, and you might see me walking down Bondi Beach with pink, speedos.
I think you would make a very striking image doing that. I don't think that you'd stand out though. That's the problem. You'd look pretty normal down that way.
No, but I love the Australian property landscape. I watch a lot of Australian programs. I love the architecture, the Scandinavian, the outdoor. I watch Lux List in Sydney on Prime. I watch Grand Design Australia. So I'm coming.
Well, there's Sydney's got the nice sort of harbour views, the water views. Maybe some of you could be a new project somewhere up there.
Just what I was telling a friend of mine. I said, I don't need a big piece. Give me what? What you want to give me? 100 square meters? Can I get a plot? I just build like the thin house. Just go up with the balcony. But no, I want to congratulate you as well and encourage you, because it's because of people like you. You got me inspired to do it, to take action. So I want to thank you for what you do, and I look forward to meeting in person.
Thank you.
You see, you have an impact, Justin, all the way across the world.
Yeah, well, saying to you off recording, you're almost literally on the other side of the world to where I am, which is quite funny. But thank you for saying that. We might have to organise a Caribbean property developing tour.
Make it happen.
We'll organise at the same time as the Australian cricket teams touring around doing a West Indian tour. That could work.
Once it happens, we will meet up. I promise you.
All right, Anselm, it's been so awesome having you on the Property Developer Podcast. Thanks for being my first Caribbean guest, hopefully not the last. And I wish you all the best with all your projects. And hopefully we cross paths on a sandy beach somewhere in the Caribbean someday.
Likewise, Jason, good luck with your projects that you have right now. And, congrats again on the podcast, the book, and the property developer training.
Thank you very much. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Property Developer Podcast. Tune in next time for more tips, ideas and inspiration to take your developing to the next level. For more developing love, make sure to visit propertydeveloperpodcast.com.